Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes made of ticky-tacky, little boxes on the hillside, little boxes all the same. There's a green one and a pink one and a blue one and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky and they all look just the same. And the people in the houses all went to the university where they were put in boxes and they came out all the same. And there's doctors and lawyers and business executives, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky and they all look just the same. And they all play on the golf course and drink their martinis dry, and they all have pretty children, and the children go to school, and the children go to summer camp, and then to the university where they are put in boxes and they come out all the same. And the boys go into business and marry and raise a family in boxes made of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same. There's a pink one and a green one and a blue one and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky and they all look just the same.
United States, we are hearing, till very recently, the big talk was about, growing population. We will be growing in numbers and we'll have a lot of immigration, and still our birth rate is much better than anything in Europe. But now we are hearing other things, that there may be some sort of stagnation in the population growth, or kind of a tipping off, a tipping point, probably mid-century. But in general, in the United States, is the view is that the population will be growing and we will have to put it somewhere, this growth. But, the unfortunate thing is that in the last decades, maybe 5-6 decades, we have been, doing not the best way of growing. And we have transformed, our places, our cities, our towns into places for the cars, as you said. It's unfortunate we have been exporting this model. We work around the world and we see the same pattern in Eastern Europe, in the Middle East, in Canada, in South America, in China, places which are growing fast. These are the models we have. And unfortunately, what we hear very often, and we tell them, why are you repeating our mistakes? Well, it worked for the Americans for quite a while, so we want to, it will work for us. It will work for us as well. The thing was that in the past 20 years, for example, especially the last decade in the United States, it was the booming times when we had the great economy, and everything was selling. So, expanding beyond the reasonable distances was a kind of something which everybody was doing, and the municipalities and the cities thought that this will be very positive for their growth, that they will be growing and the tax revenues will be much higher, and growth is the answer to everything. It was, and everything was selling till we hit this big big crash a few years ago, which was a little bit like a wake-up call. The exciting thing today is that the transition which we have witnessed before, which started after the Second World War, the transition from places for people towards places for cars is now backwards. It's now the opposite transition. Now people are saying, oh, now our cities, our villages, our suburbs are all about cars. Now we want to return back to a pedestrian-friendly and more, people-centered environments. So it's like we are witnessing this transition. And the thing is that sprawl, as we call this type of development, where everything is dependent on the cars, has been very aggressively supported. It has been supported by the public sector, by the government, building the highway system, the interstate system, being supported by the way the mortgage framework was working in the United States. A lot of subsidies were put into developing the infrastructure for this new growth, with the thinking, we need to grow. Even, national security was based to a certain extent. During the Cold War, the idea was that dispersing the population actually will protect the population from, attacks, in concentrated areas. So it was part of a bigger strategy. And now we're rethinking this. This dispersal actually makes us much less resilient to changes in the price of energy. We're dependent on foreign oil, etc., etc. So, this is one of the big drivers of this whole transition, the economic driver. Basically, we cannot afford sprawl anymore. It's so expensive. We just need to go back to building the way we used to build more in a more compact and more pedestrian-friendly way. There is a new, and it's worldwide, including in the United States, there is a new understanding about the environment. People understand the environment in a different way. They understand that sprawling, and basically gobbling up open space and water resources and all kinds of natural assets is basically not good for the planet. Important thing or another understanding is about our health, it's about our well-being, about how we age as human beings. That this is a different type of understanding. We can be healthy if we move more, if we walk more. And it's just, this is such a common sense. But now we are realizing that the lifestyles we were leading for so long, dependent on cars and not doing our daily activities in a normal way, walking to places, including our kids. They don't walk to school anymore. At least in the United States, 50 years ago, 60-70% of all kids walk to school, and today, less than 10%. If you're an older person and you cannot drive, how do you manage in a sprawling subdivision, let's say, which is only residential, like a residential bedroom community enclave, and you cannot go anywhere. You have to be driven in a car, maybe shuttled to a mall, and in the mall you can walk. It's a kind of a protected and nice environment. Actually, it's looking like a real street. If you think about it in America, and I often make this comparison, that probably the best public space in American suburbia is the interior of the mall, of the shopping mall. Mothers go with their kids there, teenagers go for their dates and, basically hanging out with friends, and the old people go there to walk and also to socialize. So, it's interesting to think about comparisons between sprawl and suburbia in Europe and in America. As I said, many of the American models have been transplanted kind of almost blindly to Europe. However, if you think about it, suburbia, the suburban model was imported to the United States from Hampstead and Welwyn and Letchworth, as the first suburbs, and they were made with a good intention that you create places which are whole or sustainable in their own right, because they are accessible by transportation, by transit. But then when the transportation changed in the United States with the big highways, then the pattern totally was blown out. And the very important element which we as new urbanists insist on bringing up to the table is the neighborhood unit. That when you have the neighborhood unit or the walkability pedestrian shed, which is the physicality of a community, you can walk 5 to 10 minutes. Usually we say, if you have all the things you need for your daily life within this walking distance, then this is a real neighborhood. And if you look at Barcelona, Barcelona is probably overlapping pedestrian sheds with the American type of sprawl can be observed, basically the disintegration of the neighborhood unit. And I usually make, and in my book, the Sprawl Repair Manual, I make the distinction between sprawl and suburbia. Because suburbs, even in the popular consciousness, are not a bad word. It's not like it's not a bad connotation. You know, suburbs are basically the places which are outside of the city, dense city. And they can be still good places. They were done initially, as we started talking about them, they were done with a good intention of a place which is self-sustainable and still walkable. And the first ones which were built in the United States, they were this type because they were done on the railroads or the streetcars, so they were streetcar neighborhoods or around stations. And people didn't have cars, they had to walk around everywhere. So they were still based on the neighborhood unit. And then, after the Second World War, with the car becoming a very democratic tool for movement everywhere, tool of freedom, then these distances didn't matter anymore. So they were kind of blown out of proportion. Sprawl was born with more or less around the time of Levittown.
Yes.
In the late 40s.
We expected a lot when we came. We had an awful lot of hope.
We were all young couples and just starting a family.
You come here expecting to build a life. And that is the most important thing in life, is the family and building a home.
There was lines waiting to sign up for homes. They were buying homes that weren't there yet. Just a stick in the ground, that's all, with a number on it.
That's what we were here for, is to start a life afresh with no war.
I've got the bell-bottom blues 'cause my sweetie is a sailor and he's sailing.
This was where slices of the American dream were plentiful and cheap. All of this was the brainchild of one man, the developer, William Levitt.
I was dancing with my darling.
Levittown began in 1952. Truman was president, Patti Page on top of the music charts.
I happened to see.
And sprawling Pennsylvania farmlands vanished in a burst of construction. Entire homes were built in rapid succession. Families moved in almost right away.
Got a house and a car and a wedding ring.
To me, it was the fastest growth of a community that allowed it to look as though it had been there a long time.
Bring a little love into my life.
It was kind of hectic, but well controlled. And it went on 7 days a week, actually 24 hours a day, because I've seen guys put roofs on at night on their lights.
There was no infrastructure, there was nothing. It was a lot of people, thousands and thousands of people coming in to one great big pot.
This is it, my hometown. The place we as members of this community call home.
Levitt devised a handful of house models to fit any budget. There was the Levittowner model, the most affordable of the choices. If you had a bit more cash, you could go for a Jubilee-style home. War veterans and their families were given special deals.
And all we had to do was put $100 down, sight unseen, but it was still a concrete block with the heater in the middle. And it took 3 months for our house to be built.
Everything was built from scratch to make life easy, from the careful placement of churches and shopping centers to home furnishings.
They came complete with everything.
Everything we needed was right there.
From mailboxes,
All the appliances were in the kitchen,
to trash cans,
2 bathrooms,
curtains.
everything was landscaped, so it was perfect.
I mean, it was a fabulous deal.
So there is the difference. That's why I differentiate, and I called the book Sprawl Repair Manual because I wanted to pay attention specifically to sprawl, to these patterns which are car-oriented. Suburbs can be pedestrian-oriented, they can be human scale, while sprawl is usually when it's really auto-centered and you have segregation of different uses. So this is the big difference.
Ahora, otra cosa en los Estados Unidos, para que entiendan eso de por qué el nuevo urbanismo siempre, o sea, el nuevo urbanismo es como un estilo bien feo, o sea, ¿no? Y bien pobre. Y la razón de eso es una razón económica y de mercadeo. Porque el americano te acepta arquitectura moderna en cualquier cosa menos en su casa. Su casa tiene que ser completamente tradicional. O sea, si miran la evolución de la casa americana, o sea, las cositas que han cambiado son bastante pocas. O sea, el garaje quizás ha sido incorporado dentro de la casa, la cocina es diferente, o sea, ahorita hay una cocina que no tiene murallas, ¿no? Y que uno puede ver televisión mientras está cocinando y cosas así, ¿no? Bueno, ahorita no hay familias tradicionales.
Claro, para
nosotros hemos hecho un recuento aquí y 75% de la familia americana no es tradicional. Y eso significa familias extendidas, o sea, familias que viven con los padres, familias que viven con los abuelos, madres solteras, hombres solteros, gente que vive sola, y eso es una familia.
We want to retrofit, if we want to repair, we need to be as aggressive and as conscious as with building sprawl. And it will take probably as many generations to rebuild as it took us to build sprawl. And it will probably not going to be everything. It's not going to be possible. At least in the United States, we have so much of it that even now with the recent crisis, we notice that on the fringes, the ex-urban developments, there are many which will be probably deserted, either totally abandoned to become nature or to be converted into agriculture. Right now they're like zombie subdivisions. Most of the foreclosures, most of the big mortgage defaults happened actually in the exurbs. And this was because the people who couldn't afford to live closer, they were driving till they qualify for a mortgage. So basically the far-fetched, the furthest away suburbs, they suffer the most. And there are studies from North Carolina, from California, from Florida even, showing these numbers. That's why the tools for retrofit or for repair need to be on all fronts. We need to be very good designers to be able to design, to show how to reweave the fabric of the suburbs. How to create connectivity to make everything walkable, from car-oriented to make it walkable and pedestrian-friendly. This is a big challenge. And and also to build on the assets which are there, because we have a lot of infrastructure there. There are a lot of buildings which are still existing. We can reuse, we can recycle, we can re-inhabit, adapt many of these spaces, reuse them. We cannot be wasteful and say, we're going to start over, let's tear it down, as it used to be in the 60s in the urban renewal. This will be much more subtle and much more opportunistic redevelopment. We'll be going and doing things very, in a much more surgical manner. But then there are two others. One is the policy and regulatory framework. Are our laws, are our codes prepared to basically accept these new changes? And so far they have not been. Regulations basically do not allow for these walkable and compact patterns to happen. So we need to change that. We need to change the operating system of our way we build cities and towns and places. And luckily, the new urbanists as a movement, we have a long history of experience of doing that. We have realized a long time ago that actually the coding things, changing the genetic material of the places we build is very important. And we have seen this actually from history. There are places where they're built in a way because there were rules which were followed. And you look at Paris, you look at London, I'm sure there were rules in Madrid and Barcelona, where certain things happen the way they are because there were rules which are written. So now we have to change the rules back to normal, to human scale settlements, not only for the car. With a very wide streets, with very fast movement, with the highways, limited infrastructure only for the cars. Not a kind of the very fine grain of pedestrian environment, the small blocks and the smaller buildings and all of these things which are very important for pedestrian movement in general. And then the third component, which is also very, very important, is the implementation or the financing or how we pay for all of this. And this is like the big question today. Today we have this economy which is everywhere. There is not a country which is not affected. Everybody's on a fast path of economic growth, but sooner or later there is slowing down. So the more incremental approach, maybe doing smaller things in certain places, maybe the very sensible. And because we're not going to have very large projects, especially in the developed world, like in the United States and to very high extent in Europe, including Spain, we just don't have that much greenfield to develop anymore. Unless we want to squander our remaining agricultural land, which is, in Europe is even worse. In America, many people say, oh, why are you afraid? If you put all of your built stuff together, you have probably only 5% of your surface built out. But if you think about it, how we are spread in the areas which are best for building, then you will see that we don't have that much land left. Some of our best cities actually were done on land which was drained swamps or lowlands. New Orleans and Boston and Washington, our capital, was in the swampland. So if you think about it, some of the best grounds are already occupied. But today, because of this economy, we are in a much kind of worse situation because we are poorer. There is not this flow of capital as it used to be into the development real estate industry, so we have to be much smarter where to grow, how to grow, what to do. And our sprawling communities actually come as a very viable place to do changes. We know that our cities, especially in the United States, in Europe is different because your cities are still in good shape, and they're still holding probably the highest real estate values in the city, within the city, in the best places, the historical places, while the American city is a different paradigm, which is a kind of the donut effect. Basically the center city is emptied out and the suburbs are where the rich people moved out. However, even this paradigm is changing. Today there is the big, you can read in the media and everywhere about the big renaissance of the American city. Everybody is returning to the inner neighborhoods and to the more urban areas. While a lot of the immigrants, kind of the first generation immigrants, are going to the suburbs because there are areas, around the first and second tier of suburbs where they're becoming more impoverished, and poorer. So even the demographics of the suburbs is changing. So that's another kind of shift. They're sometimes called ethnoburbs because there's so many ethnic diversity there. It's not like the stereotype of the white middle-class family with a couple of kids, and with a car. And this is changing. They're bigger families and they have different needs. There are many young people who are there, whose families moved from other places, and these people are in their previous lives they were accustomed to different way of life, walking more. So you can go and you can see in many places around Atlanta and even in Phoenix, Arizona. I was recently, and I witnessed in some of the cul-de-sacs of the suburban enclaves around Phoenix, you see basically spontaneous markets, happening in the cul-de-sac. And these are the ways people live, and they create a kind of a second economy, if you wish, artisan type of living. They make things, or they exchange things, or they just sell things and buy, etc., etc. So, or if you look at some of the shopping centers around cities, many ethnic small restaurants pop out and little businesses, and there is a vitality in these places which is interesting to look at and maybe to accommodate in different way. So we as architects have to be very careful in architects and planners, very careful in observing these tendencies, how people live, what we will be building and designing, and for whom. It's not only just to create things and say, okay, this is like an empty parking lot, let's fill it in with buildings because it's better. But we need to know what the market is.
How can I boil that down?
In their training courses held around the country, NCI teaches professionals and community leaders how to prepare for and conduct intense collaborative planning events called charrettes.
It's kind of a combination between a New England town meeting and a barn raising. The energy and excitement behind a traditional barn raising is that everybody is involved in the creation of something, and you need everybody to play their roles strongly to create this barn. And at the end, it's an amazing community building event.
A charrette is not just a one-day workshop. It's a high-energy, multiple-day planning event where everyone has a voice in the process.
I like to see stop signs. I like to see little islands sticking out.
The NCI charrette system can be applied to all types of planning projects. The NCI charrette system can also revive aging inner-city neighborhoods. East Fort Myers, Florida is counting on that. The challenges here are ideally suited for a charrette.
We need ambitious and visionary plans. We need plans that will inspire people.
The town planning firm of Dover, Cole and Partners is about to put the NCI charrette system to work in East Fort Myers. This charrette preparation phase is perhaps the most important part of the process. It can take from 6 weeks to 9 months before the charrette and includes a rigorous project assessment, stakeholder education, base data research, and charrette logistics. This helps to ensure that the right information and the right people are available for a successful outcome.
This intense period is one in which we bring together all kinds of information and people with expertise, and the public, and authorities and decision makers, and we put them all into the mix and work it out together.
At the kickoff that evening, the team talks about the upcoming design workshop and how neighbors can have a hand in creating a new and improved place to live and work.
The truth is, if y'all don't believe in the plan, it won't get implemented. The best plans are made by many hands. The best accountability process you can implement is the one where you are with us as we go.
Thank you for all attending tonight.
The next morning, concerned citizens take a chance and turn out for the hands-on workshop.
Rather than showing little bits of hodgepodge progress,
each person will weigh in with their best ideas on how to make their neighborhood a better place.
You can without any new construction. If you get it turned over, you can immediately put it to use.
That's magnetic, and they don't want to go home.
A world of different ideas, and yet some common themes emerge. Desire for a safer community, walkable, livable neighborhoods, and new quality development.
Thank you once again for attending, and we can't wait to see you at the Work in Progress presentation.
It was fun, it was challenging, exciting at times, it was good debate.
When the workshop ends, it's back to the design studio, where the team begins reviewing table drawings and synthesizing ideas from citizens. The charrette team is now into their 4th day and making steady progress.
Where we like to introduce like a little commercial mixed-use park.
Across the room, police talk about crime. City staff weigh in on housing, code enforcement, and economics. This is part of the first feedback loop with city staff and community members. Feedback loops give stakeholders the chance to continually review the evolving plan and offer instant feedback to the team. Charrettes last at least 4 days, sometimes more, in order to accomplish 3 feedback loops. Because of its complexity, the East Fort Myers charrette will be 7 days long.
Repeatedly every day, a presentation of ideas is made, there's a reaction, people go back to work, presented again the next day with having incorporated the comments of the prior day. And that's indeed one of the reasons you need the length of time, because you need that kind of returning of ideas, the feedback loop, to ensure the best result.
It's a transparent process. As the concepts take shape, designers add color and they're scanned into computers. Day 7, the final day of the charrette. The design team prepares for the evening's work-in-progress presentation to the public. Even the best plans can't help if they're never implemented. A key to success will be maintaining momentum. A good strategy helps too. The final plan will feature a menu of improvements and a detailed course of action, from zoning and code changes to funding solutions. That evening, anxious citizens file into council chambers. The mayor quickly hands the reins over to the charrette team. They begin to present the comprehensive and detailed set of plans and policies that have been created over the last week.
You can have growth and change that makes things better rather than worse. In fact, you should demand it and accept nothing less.
The team shows how dated shopping centers can be transformed into walkable town centers, how good design can create safer and better housing. They offer a plan for more parks and gardens, and they show where more dense development could be an asset to the community. Finally, the jewel of East Fort Myers, the Caloosahatchee River, is to be celebrated. A public promenade along the riverfront would give citizens access and a new point of pride, an exciting place to live, shop, and dine. A few highlights of a very detailed plan.
Thank you all very much.
A roadmap to a better life.
I thought it was fabulous. I mean, there's a lot of great ideas.
They heard us loud and clear. They were listening.
Do I love all of it? No. But I think it's a good start.
This wasn't just a bunch of pretty watercolors, but there were reasons and explanations behind everything that they did.
I am very positive that we're going to have a very good change for the benefit of everybody here in Fort Myers.
The charrette is usually the most efficient way. And it's we have found time and time again that there is nothing like concentrating human energy by many people on one project, on one site. And here in the United States, because there was so much disappointment with growth and the way things developed with sprawl, and everybody has traffic in front of their houses, and it's impossible, and nobody wants any more development near them, though they're there, but they don't want anybody else to be there. For every project now we have to have public process. And the public process, the best way is to have a charrette, because this is the way we can actually project and educate, tell them, look, we are going to be part of your solution, not the part of the problem of traffic. Actually, we're trying to help you and show different ways of the previous way, in contrast to the previous way. So in America, there are no projects which are not done with charrettes. This has become the staple of any kind of project, whether public or private. The public projects, municipal work from cities, they always do charrettes. It's like almost a requirement in the request for proposals. And the private sector, very rarely they opt out of a charrette. They like the charrette because they have seen it very as a very effective tool.
Entonces, incremental change es cómo producir cambios sin perturbar, o sea, sin tener que demoler todo, sino cómo producir los cambios poco a poco. Los big boxes no se van a ir de ahí, pero los big boxes son feos por fuera. Lo que hay que hacer es añadirles por afuera lo que él le dice liner buildings. De edificios existentes, añadirles una línea de más edificios que tengan vivienda arriba y retail abajo, ¿sí? O oficinas, claro, o lo que fuera. Entonces todavía está el big box ahí, pero uno no lo ve, ¿sí? O sea, es parte de la estructura urbana, es algo que no se va a ir y de todo eso. Después él agarra, por ejemplo, estos shopping centers y empieza a mirar por dónde los puede partir para poder hacer bloques, ¿cierto? Entonces incrementalmente muestra cómo puede uno ir desde A hasta Z, o sea, cómo puede ir uno de lo que es malísimo a lo que ellos consideran que es el ideal.
Well, I mean, here we have many different examples. There is one example which is actually here in Florida, I mean here in Miami, it's called Downtown Kendall, which is an edge city retrofit, which is basically a triangle of land, a fairly large one, which was a mall, but it's an example how you can rebalance, you know, the shopping with other activities, like with residential, and it's on a transit line, so it becomes like a downtown for the lower density neighborhoods.
This is the site. Downtown Atlanta is right over here. You know, so it's about 2 miles from the site over. It's off the picture here, but downtown Atlanta is over here. This is one of the major highways that leads out of downtown. A lot of existing neighborhoods. This is all existing neighborhoods. And the site right here at the main intersection was originally an industrial site. It was a spot where they were recycling concrete. They would take old concrete and crush it up and make it into road beds and things. So it was originally, but it had gone vacant. There was nothing on the site when we began the project. And so the idea was, because it's such a good location right at main intersection and with a lot of existing residential around, the thought was to do a mixed-use project here that could be a center for this whole area. And so people here could come to the center to shop. And to have offices and that sort of thing. And so the idea was to create a lot of diversity in the site. And so within this small area, you can see these colored lots are basically single-family houses. The existing neighborhood over here is single-family, and so for political purposes, it was useful to have single-family close to that single-family, so that neighbors aren't upset about, because in America it's difficult oftentimes to do more dense things close to people.
Yeah.
And so this is a kind of a transition. Most of this gray is actually townhouses. So this picture.
Yeah.
So once you get past the single family, we started to introduce more of these more dense kinds of building types to make it more of a center. And so this is actually one of the public squares. This is this space. And so you can see the townhouses on this side are designed so that they could even have commercial on the ground floor. You could have retail on the ground floor. And this little park you can see with the trees and things, and there's benches. This is actually this little space right here. And then transitioning to the corner over here is more intense mixed-use buildings. And so here again is that existing neighborhood, and you can see the idea of the single-family houses up here. One thing that we did differently, these single-family houses have the parking from the front. And so as you go down the street in this neighborhood, you see garage doors, but we added the alleys in the back for this. So when you go down the street, it looks very good actually. You just see the front porches. And then so the idea is that the next street over, you can see is row houses on both sides of the street. So it gets a little more dense. This is single family on both sides. This is row houses on both sides, so attached together. Looks a little bit like that again. And then as you get to the corner, you can see these more intense kind of downtown mixed-use buildings. This one, in this particular project, the developer was very particular about the designs. They were interested in the design of the buildings. Actually, when we were doing the rendering, the drawings for the buildings, they were looking at the building details, and you can tell that they were trying to fine-tune the design that they actually wanted to build using the renderings. And so they asked for a lot of changes to the renderings so that they could fine-tune things. And their idea was for a lot of the buildings, they wanted to replicate the kinds of structures that you see in Atlanta. Especially one of the things they really liked about Atlanta was they have some beautiful old historic industrial buildings. So they have they have this kind of a feel. They have a kind of a strength to them, but they have some beautiful detailing too. But the detailing tends to be pretty simple and straightforward. But very nice. You know, you have a nice cornice at the top and a nice proportions to the windows, but not too fancy. But at the same time, with a lot of warmth to them. And a lot of it is the brick architecture with limestone details around the windows, this sort of thing. And so they really wanted to try that. And then there's a little bit of freedom in terms of modern versus more traditional. Yeah, the same park, the way they designed it, it has a playground at this end. And then open grass field at this end. And then there's actually a waterway that runs through on this end. And so it's actually wonderful because it functions as a public space. You can see the events, but at the same time it actually helps to treat stormwater. And so rain falls and the water runs across this grass and helps to clean it up before it goes down into the waterway. So it has two functions. The original design, this is actually a school in this corner. It turned out though, after talking with the local school board, that they have an existing school close enough by that they decided that after examining it for a long time, they decided they didn't want to build a second school connection. So this side, there's a couple of connections you can see actually in the plan there. There's 2 street connections off of this street. And then this is a highway, so unfortunately no connections there. But this is a major connection that leads up to downtown. And so once you come across, there's multiple street connections here, and then multiple street connections on this side also. And so every spot that it's possible to connect, we connected as much as we could. That's often a challenge, trying to figure out ways to connect, especially with existing neighborhoods. Sometimes an existing neighborhood is very resistant. Here, I think they were so interested in being able to get to the commercial and to some of the services. And I think also one thing that was helpful was that our project was closer to the main intersection. And so if it had been the other way around, if they were close to the intersection, they would think that our residents had to pass through their neighborhood. But here they had just the opportunity to take a shortcut to the intersection. So it was good for them. So we got the connections.